Welcome to CinePro, where we bring your favorite movies back to life with quick recaps, hidden details, and everything you missed. The series begins in Northern California in 2007, in a big house where everyone is gathered, celebrating their newlywed friends. At night, they stay up together, talking. Then they decide to share stories about ghosts and spirits. One of the guests decides to tell a story. They reveal that the story is about someone they know. Everyone gets excited to hear it. She begins narrating the story. The events start in London in 1987, with Dani, a young, reclusive teacher. We learn that she is isolated by choice. She has come to London to meet Lord Henry, a famous lawyer, because she saw an ad for a nanny needed to take care of his brother's children. When she goes to Henry's office for the interview, he welcomes her. He explains that his brother's children are exceptional and unique, but they are a bit difficult, especially Miles, who needs discipline and structure after returning from boarding school. He asks Dani to teach and tutor Miles and his sister Flora at their home. He tells her that the house is very large, more like a mansion than a home, and that Miles and Flora are very attached to it, especially after their parents passed away. The mansion also has a cook, a caretaker, and a housekeeper. He informs her to only contact him for urgent matters, because he is very busy and unavailable for casual communication. After all this, Dani tells him she is very interested and excited to take the job, but Henry is skeptical of her. He asks what she might be hiding, because most applicants for such a job are older, and she is under 30, willing to live in the countryside with 2 difficult children, giving up her life. Dani insists she finds it surprising that such an easy job with good pay has been advertised for 6 months without any takers. She suspects there is a secret being kept from her. Later, Dani is at a bar, still searching for a job. After Henry rejected her, suddenly, she sees Henry entering the same bar. She approaches him and sits with him, offering to share a drink, determined to get him to reveal the secret about the house and his brother's children. Henry tells her that no one applies for the job, because the previous nanny committed suicide at the mansion. Rumors spread that anyone who gets close to the children or the mansion dies. First, their parents died. Then, their nanny Dani tells him she understands the feeling of loss and empathizes with the children. She believes she can make a big difference in their lives, if given the chance. Henry agrees to hire her. She returns to her hotel room, where we see her covering up mirrors. She packs her belongings and calls her mother, telling her she got the job and will be staying in London. Her mother disapproves, saying running away is not a solution. Dani gets upset and insists she's not running away. As she leaves the room, she glances at the mirror. We discover she sees a terrifying ghost of a young man in the reflection. Later, she waits for the car to take her to the mansion. Owen, the cook, arrives and welcomes her. They travel together, and Dani sleeps for most of the journey. She wakes up to admire the beautiful countryside scenery. She tells Owen she thought he was just a driver. He explains that he drives and runs errands for Henry, but he is also the mansion's cook and is studying to become a chef. When Dani arrives at the mansion, she meets Flora. Flora is a very sweet girl. She welcomes Dani warmly and says she didn't expect her to be so beautiful. Dani thanks her and is delighted by her compliment. She mentions how much she likes the lake. Flora becomes tense and warns her not to go near the lake because it is not safe. Flora takes Dani to meet her brother Miles. At the time, Miles is with Hannah. The housekeeper Hannah welcomes Dani. She shows her around the mansion and takes her to her room. Miles gives Dani a small gift, a hairpin everyone is gathering at the dinner party, and Owen leaves to go to his sick mother, as he has to spend the night with her. Meanwhile, Dani helps Flora take a bath, but she notices that Flora keeps staring at something unseen in the bathroom. Suddenly, Flora becomes very upset when she sees a hairpin in Dani's hair, a gift Miles had given her. Flora tells her it belonged to Giselle, the former nanny who had committed suicide by pulling out her own hair. Dani is unsettled and apologizes if she upset Flora. Just then, she notices Flora staring again at something, focused on what seems to be another presence in the bathroom. Dani, nervous, asks Flora to get out of the tub and get dressed, suggesting they play with dolls before bed. When Dani puts Flora to sleep, she notices the dollhouse in the room is filled with dolls representing everyone in the house, along with other unknown figures. As Dani picks up the dolls from the floor, she finds one under the bed. Flora asks her to return it to its place because that doll's spot is always under the bed, and warns Dani not to walk around the palace at night. She should stay in her bed until morning. Though Dani considers following her advice, She can't sleep due to terrible insomnia, so she heads to the kitchen to make herself a hot drink. She feels there's something strange in the house. The next morning, Flora is very upset with Danny for leaving her room, and Danny is confused about how she knew that. Flora makes cryptic comments about the Lady of the Lake, which only deepens Danny's unease. Later, Danny sees a man standing on one of the palace balconies. She waves to him, but he vanishes. Returning to the kitchen, she finds everyone gathered, including Bev and Jamie the gardener, who acts as if Danny is invisible. When Danny mentions seeing a man, everyone is surprised. No one else is in the house. Miles and Flora exchange knowing glances, and Hannah tells Danny she was probably just imagining it. As Danny walks through the palace, she finds one of Flora's dolls outside in the garden. It looks strange. Nearby, she notices a small church next to the estate. Inside, she finds Hannah and asks about Flora's many dolls. Hannah explains Flora sees them as protective charms and tells her about the family's tragedy, their parents' deaths, followed by Giselle's suicide. Giselle had fallen in love with a manipulative man named Peter, who betrayed her, stole from Henry, and fled. Heartbroken, she killed herself in the lake. Flora was the one who found her. Since then, the house has been quiet and somber. Flora became deeply attached to her dolls, seeing them as protection. That night, Danny is with Flora when Miles enters and asks her to get something from Flora's closet. As Danny reaches inside, Flora and Miles shut the door on her and lock her in. Danny is furious, thinking they're playing a cruel joke. Suddenly, the ghost of the young man she always sees appears in the mirror. Danny panics and screams for the children to let her out. After a long time, they open the door and apologize, saying they didn't mean to. Danny tells them to go to bed and, emotionally shaken, heads to her room. But on the way, she finds muddy footprints on the floor. She follows them through the palace and is shocked to find Flora staring out of her window at her. The next morning, Danny talks to the children about what happened. They claim it was all an accident, but Danny doesn't believe them. She makes Miles clean up the muddy footprints, suspecting he and Flora are hiding something. Later, Danny offers to help Flora retrieve a doll from the basement that Miles had thrown down there. Flora is terrified of the basement and refuses to go, so Danny goes alone. She finds the doll sitting in the middle of the floor in an eerie position and feels a strange presence in the basement. She returns the doll to Flora and goes to check on Miles, who is sitting silently, staring out of the window. Flash back to 6 months earlier. Miles is in boarding school, sitting in class with his friend Hopper. He suddenly climbs a tall tree with Hopper and inexplicably throws himself off, breaking his arm. Later, Miles gets into a violent fight with another boy. The school staff question him, but he remains withdrawn and disturbed, grieving his parents' deaths. One night, a teacher finds a pigeon killed. The next day, Miles is called into a meeting with the headmaster and teachers. They inform him he may be expelled unless he explains his actions. Miles confesses he regrets killing the pigeon, but also reveals something darker. He was going to slaughter it, remove its organs, and torture it. The headmaster and teachers decide to expel him. When his friend Hopper comes to sleep over, he discovers that Miles forgot Flora's letter under his pillow. When he opens it, he finds a drawing asking Miles to come back home to be with her. Hopper realizes that Miles was intentionally misbehaving just to get expelled and return home. Back in the present, Danny finds Flora in her room playing with the glasses she had found earlier. Danny becomes visibly tense and afraid when she sees the glasses, leaves the room, and breaks down crying in the garden. Jamie finds her there and comforts her. Miles picks roses from the garden to give to Danny as an apology for locking her in the closet. Danny also begins to sense that Miles is acting strangely toward her. That night, Danny decides to play with Miles and Flora before bed. Flora chooses to play hide-and-seek. Danny searches all over the house but can't find them. Then she hears music coming from the forbidden wing of the mansion. She follows the sound and finds it coming from an old music box. But suddenly, Miles attacks her, behaving disgustedly and erratically. Danny tries to calm him down, but he ignores her. Then she sees the same man she had spotted earlier on the balcony. She grabs a stick to defend herself, but he vanishes. Moments later, she sees Miles faint through the window and rushes to help him. Miles regains consciousness and, panicked, urges Danny to call the police because someone strange is in the house. Meanwhile, Flora is in her room sitting calmly next to a terrifying ghost who holds a photo, a picture that shows the same man Danny saw along with Giselle. Miles also wakes up and sees the same man through the window. We flash back to 1 year earlier when Peter, the man from the photo, worked with Henry at his office. One day, Giselle came to apply for the nanny job, and as soon as Peter saw her, he was captivated by her. When Henry hired her, Peter offered to drive her to the mansion. There, Giselle began her work with Jamie and the two children. Flora immediately took to her and told her that her dolls were not like regular dolls. Peter entered with a bouquet of flowers, gave it to Flora, and asked Giselle to help her put it in a vase. That night, Peter and Giselle stayed up talking. He told her she deserved a better life, and she said she wanted to become a lawyer to fight for harassed girls. Their conversation grew intimate. The next day, Peter told Flora and Giselle he would be staying at the house for a few days. Henry had approved it. One day, Peter took her to the forbidden wing of the house. Giselle saw footprints on the floor and became upset, saying they should respect the rules and not enter. Peter went into a room to prepare a heavy coat that belonged to Flora's mother, Charlotte, and insisted Giselle give it to Flora. Giselle refused, and the two argued. Later, Giselle caught Peter packing his bags and realized he was planning to leave. He was angry and jealous. Having noticed that Giselle was on good terms with Owen, she was deeply upset by his behavior and words. Back in the present, the police arrive at the mansion. Flora hands Danny the photo she had, and it confirms that the man Danny kept seeing is the same one in the picture with Giselle, Peter. Hannah recognizes him instantly and tells Danny he was the one who stole a large amount of money from Henry, ran away, and had tricked Giselle emotionally. When the police ask Hannah if she's seen him since, she says no, not since the day he disappeared. The officer says they searched everywhere but couldn't find him and advises them to lock the house tightly. Hannah and Danny remain worried. That night, Danny decides to search the garden in case Peter is hiding there. She finds Jamie doing the same. Later, they all agree to sleep in one room for safety. While staying up, they discuss what might cause Peter to reappear after all this time. When they grow tired, they decide to return to their separate rooms. But when Danny lies down on her bed, she suddenly sees bloody hands on the mattress. She panics, but realizes it's just her imagination. The next morning, Danny finds Flora missing from her room. She searches and finds her by the lake, distressed and crying. Flora screams, revealing she saw the ghost of Miss Giselle in the lake. A doctor checks on Flora, assuring Danny and Hannah she is fine. Danny wonders why Henry hasn't visited despite their numerous calls. Hannah explains that Henry rarely comes to the mansion unless there's a major crisis. That night, Flora and Miles put on a play everyone gathers to watch and encourage them. During the performance, the phone rings. Jamie answers. It's Owen's neighbor calling to inform him that his mother has passed away. Owen leaves to be with his family. Jamie also departs shortly after. Suddenly, Danny sees the ghost of the young man she always sees in mirrors. She screams in terror. We flash back to Danny's childhood, where she is sitting with her close friend, Eddie. They are engaged, but Danny is not excited about the engagement. Eddie shows her the dress he bought specifically for her, which deeply affects Danny at that moment. One day, she goes out with Eddie on a romantic outing, and as soon as Eddie starts talking about the wedding, Danny becomes anxious and decides to confess to him that, although she loves him very much, she doesn't want to marry him. Eddie is shocked by what she's saying, and they leave, getting into the car to go home. At that moment, Danny explains to Eddie saying it was because she didn't want to upset him or her mother. Eddie gets angry at her and gets out of the car, but suddenly, a car hits him. Danny collapses at the sight, especially when she gets out to check on Eddie and finds him bleeding. Later, she's at the hospital with Eddie's family and completely breaks down when she finds out that Eddie has died. Overwhelmed with guilt, she begins to see Eddie's ghost in every mirror she looks into. At the funeral, she becomes terrified when she sees Eddie's reflection in the mirror behind her. She covers the mirror, scared and broken. Returning to the present, Danny and Jamie are dressed in black as they head to Owen's mother's funeral. Afterward, they all gather in the kitchen, preparing food together. Sees Flora walking alone in the garden, distracted and deep in thought. She rushes to her and touches her gently. But the moment Jamie places her hand on Flora's head, the girl collapses. They carry her inside and lay her on the bed. When Flora wakes up, she calmly tells them she was just dreaming and reassures them that she's fine. Later that night, Danny checks on Flora and calls for Hannah to help her, but is startled when Hannah appears out of nowhere. Danny asks how she keeps vanishing and reappearing like that. Hannah replies calmly, saying she was next to them all along, and tells Danny to go downstairs and wait for her. Danny becomes closer to Flora and tucks her into bed. She notices a small boy playing with the dollhouse, but realizes it was just her imagination. Later that night, Flora wakes up to find everyone gathered at the dining table, eating. She feels upset and sad that they are eating without her. Danny reminds her that she had eaten earlier, but Flora doesn't remember. Everyone senses that Flora is not herself. The story flashes back to Charlotte giving birth to Flora, with Henry present at the manor. Dominic, Charlotte's brother, is informed about the birth. It's clear from Henry and Charlotte's interactions that there is something between them. When Flora grows up, she wakes up one day from sleep and finds a strange, scary child in her room, a child with no facial features. Terrified, she runs to her mother to tell her what she saw. When she enters the room, she's surprised to see her Uncle Henry sitting with her mother. Henry tells her they're simply having breakfast together. Flora quickly urges them to follow her to her room to see the faceless child, but by the time they arrive, the child has disappeared. Henry gently convinces her that she must have imagined it. The next day, while Henry is in his office, he calls Flora to check on her and asks if the faceless child reappeared. She tells him that he never came back. Later, her father returns from his travels and also brushes it off, telling her it was all in her imagination. Flora gives the phone to her father, and at that moment, Henry becomes visibly tense. On Flora's birthday, Henry gives her a very special gift, a large, detailed model of the manor. Meanwhile, Dominic, Flora's father, begins to behave mysteriously and treats Henry in an unusually cold way. That night, Cheryl walks into the kitchen and sees someone sitting silently at the dining table. Around the same time, Dominic confronts Charlotte and tells her something that's haunted him, that Flora was born very prematurely, which means Charlotte must have been pregnant while he was away on a long work trip to Russia. He confesses that he has spent 6 years thinking about this, and now he knows the truth, that Flora is not his daughter. In a panic, Charlotte insists that Dominic loves Henry. Cheryl overhears this and begins to cry. The next day, Dominic confronts Henry, and it's revealed that Henry has been fired from his job. Dominic asserts that Flora is his daughter and that Henry has no right to enter their home or see the children again. Cheryl then says her goodbyes and informs everyone that she is traveling to India with Dominic and that everything between them is now completely over. On the day of their departure, Henry receives a call informing him that Dominic and Charlotte have died in an accident. Henry is devastated by the news, enters a state of denial, and sees a darker version of himself for the first time, feeling terrified. Returning to the present, Henry is deeply saddened by these memories and decides to go to the manor, but his evil other version tries to stop him. And at the same time, Flora wakes up from her sleep suddenly, shaken by the memories she's been seeing in her dreams. She opens her eyes to find Giselle sitting beside her on the bed. Giselle tells her that she's upset by everything Flora's going through, especially Miles's strange behavior. Just then, Danny enters the room and sees Giselle sitting there. She immediately tells Flora to come over to her and step away from Giselle. As they leave the room, Danny sees Peter standing in the hallway, which terrifies her even more. Suddenly, both Giselle and Peter vanish. Flora panics and runs, with Danny chasing after her. The chase leads them down to the basement where, unexpectedly, Miles hits Danny on the head. When she regains consciousness, Danny is overwhelmed with fear and confusion, struggling to understand what's happening, only to be horrified once more as she sees Giselle and Peter reappear right in front of her. Giselle explains to Flora that this is not an easy task and not everyone can do it. Suddenly, there is a knock at the door, but Miles and Flora insist on knocking. At that time, Peter is moving between dreams. We go back in time to when the police were investigating Hannah, Peter, and Giselle about the disappearance of items from the mansion. Henry had reported Peter for stealing the disc, and the officer informs him that Peter is still a thief and embezzler. Giselle is shocked by what she hears, especially since Peter had told her earlier that he was saving money for them to travel to America together. She didn't know he was stealing. When they leave, Miles tells Giselle that no one believes what he and Flora said, that the Lady of the Lake killed Peter and took him. He says, "Even I don't remember anything." The next day, Giselle is standing in the garden, lost in thought. At that moment, Jamie comes to stand beside her. Giselle accuses Jamie of coming to mock her, as Jamie had warned her several times about Peter, saying he wasn't a good person. But Jamie tells her she's there to support her and help her because she doesn't deserve to suffer like this. Jamie suggests Giselle contact Henry and work with him through a lawyer. Later, Peter's ghost appears to Giselle, shocking her. He tells her the police are looking for him and admits to being a thief and embezzler. She's stunned when Peter confesses that he indeed did all of this and says he's doomed. He walks away without saying goodbye or leaving a message, revealing that he hasn't truly left and has been trapped in the mansion all along. She just couldn't see him. Giselle doesn't believe his words, so Peter asks her to extend her hand to understand. When he places his hand above hers, she's shocked to find his hand passes through hers as if it's air. At that moment, she believes him and starts to accept what Miles and Flora had said. She then goes to the forbidden part of the mansion, calling for Peter to appear again. When he does, she asks him to leave the mansion with her and go to America as they had planned. Peter tells her he is trapped in the mansion and cannot leave. He has tried many times to free himself and escape, but every time, he finds himself pulled back again. Giselle breaks down, frustrated that she can't touch Peter anymore. Peter tries to comfort her, but he disappears again. She looks at herself in the mirror, and Peter reappears. It becomes clear that Peter has managed to enter Giselle's body. They agree that Peter will remain in Giselle's body so they can escape the mansion together. But as soon as Giselle reaches the gate, she is stopped by an invisible barrier and collapses to the ground. At that moment, Peter's ghost leaves her body, and their escape plan fails. Afterward, Giselle sinks into sadness and depression, especially since Peter never appears to her again following the failure. A week later, he returns and tells her he has found a new way for them to be together, to touch and feel one another again. But she must trust him and allow him to control her memories. When she agrees and Peter possesses her body once more, he drives her to walk into the lake and drown beside his own corpse. The next day, Flora and Jamie find Giselle's body floating in the water. But instead of finding peace, Giselle regains consciousness inside one of her shared memories with Peter, heartbroken and furious to realize that he manipulated her into ending her life. She begs to be released from this cycle of dreams and memories. Meanwhile, back in the present, Flora and Miles try to free Danny, but Peter reappears and yells at them. Giselle returns as well, and Peter convinces the children to surrender their bodies to him and Giselle, promising that their souls will reunite with their deceased parents. When Flora and Miles hesitate, Peter conjures a faceless ghost, a terrifying reminder of what happens to souls who remain trapped for too long. Scared, the children accept and perform a ritual, fainting as Peter and Giselle take over their bodies. Danny is devastated, unsure how to save them. Peter, now in Miles's body, brings Hannah to the well and asks her to look inside. She hesitates but obeys and sees her own dead body at the bottom, finally realizing she is a ghost and that Peter has taken over Miles. At the same time, Giselle leaves Flora's body, revealing that she and Flora had made a secret plan to trick Peter. Flora frees Danny, and Giselle tells her there is still time to save Flora, but not Miles. At that moment, the Lady of the Lake appears and takes Danny because she emerges every night. We go back to the mid-17th century, at the time of Mr. Holby's death. He had two daughters, Viola, the elder, and Perdita, the younger. After his death, Perdita was devastated, being sensitive and easily moved to tears, unlike Viola, who had a strong personality and could endure and hide her emotions. After their father's death, they struggled to maintain their mansion. They had a cousin named Arthur, who was handsome, influential, and educated. Perdita started feeling attracted to him. Viola and Perdita agreed that Arthur should marry one of them. Arthur chose to marry Viola, who succeeded in saving the family mansion. Afterward, Viola faced difficulty sleeping, waking up every night at the same time to wander the mansion. Over time, she developed feelings for Arthur. Later, she became pregnant and gave birth to a daughter named Isabel. Viola was known for her love of dresses made of luxurious silk and satin, adorned with gemstones. Over time, Isabel became gravely ill, coughing up blood. A doctor, wearing protective gear against the plague, examined her. However, he informed Arthur and Perdita that Viola was not infected with the plague, but suffered from a pulmonary disease, giving her only a few months to live. She had to be completely isolated due to the contagious and dangerous nature of her illness. They prepared a room for Viola in the mansion for her isolation. The doctor tried various treatments, including incense, medicinal leeches, and acupuncture. Years passed. Isabel grew older, and after 5 years, everything changed. Arthur and Perdita grew closer, developing feelings for each other. Viola, in her deteriorating state, saw them dancing lovingly together one night. Enraged, she slapped Perdita and was taken back to her room to rest. Viola decided to gather all her jewelry and dresses into a chest for her daughter to inherit after her death. One day, Arthur had to leave for work due to financial struggles. Perdita, seeing Viola's suffering, decided to end her misery and killed her. After Viola's death, Arthur began seeing her image, which led him to marry Perdita. 3 years later, Perdita failed to conceive, and Isabel refused to accept her as a mother. Over the years, Arthur's financial situation worsened. Perdita suggested using the contents of Viola's chest, but Arthur refused, stating it was Isabel's inheritance from her mother. Perdita, however, decided to take the key from Arthur's office in his absence. She opened the chest, only to be strangled by Viola's spirit emerging from it. Arthur returned to find Perdita's lifeless body next to the chest, her appearance horrifying. We go back to the day Viola died. Her spirit awakened, trapped in the chest, unaware she was dead and merely a ghost. She remained in this state for years until she realized she had died. She waited for her daughter to grow up and open the chest. However, when Isabel finally opened it, Viola strangled her, killing her as she had killed Perdita. Arthur and Isabel decided to throw the chest into the lake, fearing it was cursed. Viola's heart broke as her chest was discarded. From then on, she would rise from the lake every night, wandering the mansion, reliving her memories until they faded completely. Over time, she forgot her identity, her name, and even her face. One night, Viola entered the mansion as usual and saw a child. She took the child to the lake. Over the years, all the spirits Viola had taken became faceless and trapped in the mansion, unable to leave. We learn that Viola is the lady of the lake, who roams the mansion every night. Flora and Miles see her, and Danny becomes her final victim. In the present, Hannah hears Flora screaming and sees the lady of the lake, now revealed as Viola, taking Danny. Hannah tries to stop her but is overcome. Viola takes Danny to the forbidden part of the mansion. When Flora sees this, Viola releases Danny and takes Flora instead. At this moment, Henry arrives, sees Viola taking Flora to the lake, and tries to save her. Viola chokes him and throws him to the ground. Owen manages to save Henry before he dies. Danny goes to the lake and speaks to Viola, offering her body to her forever. Viola approaches Danny, releases Flora, and disappears. Peter leaves Miles' body, and Miles regains consciousness. Henry hugs Flora and Miles, apologizing for being absent from their lives. The next day, they discover that Hannah is dead in the well, realizing she was a ghost all along. Afterward, the mansion becomes peaceful, with no strange occurrences. Henry takes care of his niece and nephew, keeping the secret that Flora is his biological daughter. Meanwhile, Jamie and Danny are together, but Danny starts feeling unsettled and sad. She tells Jamie she feels Viola's presence within her, sensing her anger and emotions as if their spirits have merged. Danny fears Viola will take her at some point. Jamie tries to comfort her. Danny and Jamie visit Flora and Miles, saying their goodbyes. Henry thanks Danny for her help and care for the children. Later, Danny visits Jamie at her flower shop, but is shocked to see Viola's reflection in the glass. One day, while at Jamie's house, Danny sees Viola in the water while washing dishes, becomes frightened, and breaks the plate in her hands. She tells Jamie about seeing Viola repeatedly. The next day, Jamie finds the house flooded and Danny staring blankly. Danny becomes a danger to Jamie, fearing she might harm her. One morning, Jamie wakes up to find Danny has left, leaving a note saying the monster has emerged and she must leave. Jamie returns to the mansion, goes to the lake, and dives in, searching for Danny. The Lady of the Lake took control because Viola trapped her journey. She became dominant because she was the strongest and decided that no one would die again or let Viola steal any more souls. Returning to the guest who was talking about the story, everyone was deeply moved by it. The bride stayed with her because the story touched something inside her. She told her that her middle name was Flora. On the wedding day, the chest is present, and they look at two guests, and we discover they are Owen and Miles. The bride looks at her uncle who is dancing with her, and we discover that the bride is Flora and her uncle dancing with her is Henry. When the chest returns to the house, we discover that it is Jamie. And here our movie ends. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel and activate the notification button so you never miss